Wanda Ware is taking a trip down memory lane.
It has been, a couple of decades since I've seen this newspaper.
And not just any trip. You see, Ware spent the summer of her junior year in 1972 as a part of the 3rd Ward Beat newspaper staff.
I was looking back at this particular article and I was very critical of the city council meeting.
She went on to read the editorial she wrote.
It's one thing to listen to one's problems, but it's another to act on them. This is one of the things that the people at the head of this great industrial city don't realize.
The 3rd Ward Beat was a one-issue paper staffed by high school students in the Rochester area, with the late journalist Howard Coles serving as the advisor. Coles was the founder of the Frederick Douglass Voice, a newspaper which ran from 1933 to 1996 that highlighted black life in Rochester.
We were very proud to be working on this newspaper with him, and very proud to be under his tutelage because of his great skill.
The 3rd Ward Beat may have been lost to time had it not been for the efforts of Joan Howard, Coles' daughter, and the Rochester Museum and Science Center preserving his works.
What he always wanted to do, to teach people, to teach black people how to do things so that they could have better lives. It seemed like a really good idea to him to have the teens included in it. He felt that the newspaper was the way to reach people, which it was. That was what his whole life was about, was doing things to better the conditions for black people.
While Ware ended up not pursuing a career in journalism, she worked as a paralegal for many years, and it was the summer of 1972 that helped Ware hone her writing and editing skills that she would use in her adult life.
Well, I look back on it a lot of times, and it was basically my first summer job. It just gave me a more insight into journalism and what goes into it.
In Rochester, Phillip Boudreaux, Spectrum News. Ruth Redman loves to tend to her garden.
I'm just trying to rid my garden of pesky weeds.
Unfortunately, she is limited on how often she could go out.
The heat is too much for me to bear on a typical summer day. I have multiple sclerosis, and heat intolerance is one of those things that a lot of us deal with. It causes, at least for me, fatigue.
But Redman has a solution. Right before she begins, she puts on a cooling vest that prevents her from overheating.
On a warm summer day, I can do activities that I wouldn't be able to do. I would be too exhausted to be able to do them. I would be sitting inside trying to cool off or doing some other activity, and this and whatever else I do wearing the cooling vest would go undone.
This cooling vest was designed right here in Rochester by Curtis Cracky and Brad Dunn when they were graduate students at RIT. Cracky says they came up with the concept in 2016 after hearing the story of a Webster man who fainted on an 80-degree day because of heat sensitivity from multiple sclerosis. The invention eventually sparked the creation of their company, Thermapparel.
Keep their core body temperature cold so that they can go out and enjoy all of those activities that we like to do here in Rochester in the summer, because the winters are what they are.
This is accomplished by placing 4 cooling packets on the lower back. Dunn explains ice isn't used at all.
They're a biodegradable, non-toxic phase change material, which is a fancy way of saying that they melt and freeze. And what's unique about our packs is that they melt at 70 degrees Fahrenheit, so that keeps your body cool without being too cold as it would be if it was an ice pack.
Since its inception, Thermapparel has sold its cooling vest in 16 countries, but for Cracky and Dunn, the most important thing is being able to help people live comfortably without letting heat get in the way.
We get these wonderful letters and stories from our customers. We call them Now I Can stories, because they talk about that before the cooling vest that they weren't able to do things, but now they have the vest. They say, now I can.
I was able to go to my kid's soccer game. I was able to go to the beach for the first time in 5 years. And those are really profound, important, just life things that they would be missing out on otherwise.
It makes Redman very thankful that multiple sclerosis doesn't have to stop her from doing what she loves during the hot summer days.
I find gardening very soothing and relaxing, even though it's hard work, It's just an opportunity to have some quiet. It's almost meditative, you know. I can think, I can pray, I can just, you know, spend time out here in nature and hear the birds.
In Rochester, Phillip Boudreaux, Spectrum News. Jeff Colby of Massachusetts just spent some time out in Keuka Lake.
We rented a cottage here and we just brought the boat back. It's very windy out there today, but we were here for 2 weeks and we used the boat, you know, most of the days that we were here.
Upon docking at the Penn Yan outlet, he is greeted by Keuka Lake Association watercraft steward Ross Abbott.
Would it be okay if I inspected your boat and trailer for aquatic invasive species?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
After a quick inspection,
This is a native narrowleaf pondweed, so this is not the invasive that we're looking for.
Abbott does these inspections because of an invasive species that was discovered in Keuka Lake, the Starry Stonewort. It is a macroalgae native to Europe and Asia that found its way to the lake within the last several years. Laura Bailey is a natural resources educator with Cornell Cooperative Extension. She says this particular algae spreads easily, and with no predators to feed off of it, it could potentially drive out the local fish species and change the lake's ecosystem.
It doesn't require seed, it doesn't require a root, it just requires a piece of this plant caught on a watercraft. And then that watercraft goes to another water body, launches, this fragment falls off into a new water body, and it can root and establish a whole new population just by a piece of it.
As the water steward, Abbott also monitors how much Starry Stonewort is in the Penn Yan outlet that leads to Keuka Lake. This is accomplished with a rake toss.
This is our Starry Stonewort pile, and this is our pile of native species.
He's not surprised that he pulled out a lot more Starry Stonewort than anything else.
It's grown up higher in the water column, so it's tended to actually crowd out some of the natives underneath it at this point, and it has become a more and more dominant part of the sample in the past few weeks.
If not controlled, Abbott says the Starry Stonewort would push out local sunfish and bass, which would hurt fishing and tourism. That's why, as a water steward who grew up on the lake, he teaches boaters like Jeff how to prevent the spread of invasive species.
This area has always been very, very important to me. And it's important to me that also plants like this, Starry Stonewort, don't end up in other places, because I know those places are just as important to other people as Keuka is to myself.
In Penn Yan, Phillip Boudreaux, Spectrum News. Nearly every restaurant has French fries, so there are a lot of opinions about which are the best.
McDonald's fries are always good. I also like KFC fries.
Here at the University of Rochester, a local food tech startup is helping them take a different approach to the restaurant staple. This is Max Richmond of Farther Farms in Rochester, bringing French fries to the university that never have to be frozen.
This is a weekly delivery of fries to University of Rochester, and every time I do this I feel a little bit like I'm making history, because never before has it been possible to deliver French fries in the back of a Subaru.
He's been delivering the shelf-stable fries like this to the university for 3 months now. Richmond explains they are able to avoid having them frozen by cooking them with a specific amount of pressure and carbon dioxide instead of using steam and hot water.
We want to make food more accessible, right? We want to make the supply chain more sustainable. So what we try to do is take products that are traditionally frozen and refrigerated and convert them into shelf stability.
Since they are shelf-stable, Antonio Pignagrande, the senior executive chef for the U of R's Harvest Table, is able to serve them up in half the time it would take to cook normal fries.
Freezer space is tight, so the less we can put on our freezers, the better. But also from an environmental standpoint, less we rely on freezers and use some of our ambient temperature storage, it's better for the environment.
Which comes in handy for the pop-up poutine stand the university set up, showcasing these shelf-stable fries. It attracted many curious students like Miral Abdalaziz.
Can I get garlic dill?
Yep.
She sat down and gave him a taste.
I think they're pretty good, yeah. They're very crispy and good texture and fresh. Yeah, I like them.
Ajawa Ampiabani also enjoyed them and was surprised to learn they never had to be frozen.
It shows like how fresh they are, Because like typically, like if you have to freeze them, refrigerate them, it shows like they have to be, so you can't just have it not frozen or refrigerated. So to some extent, it's like, oh, like okay, like this is definitely like fresher.
While Farther Farms has already brought these fries to the U of R in several restaurants in Rochester, Richmond is excited about the possibilities this brings.
What we're trying to do for shelf-stable foods is what Impossible Foods and Beyond Meat did for the plant-based meat movement.
In Rochester, Phillip Boudreaux, Spectrum News.
Ok. Sí, puedes tener tiempo para terminar esos.
Sandra Blackman se volvió la directora ejecutiva nueva de Eugenio María de Hostos Charter School en Rochester este pasado febrero. Tiene más de 30 años de experiencia en educación.
Are we counting in Spanish too?
Ya es el fan número 1 de la escuela.
Me encanta, siempre que paso por aquí, esta clase está siempre muy envuelta. Los niños están utilizando sus destrezas de saltar, de tomar turnos y aprendiendo todos juntos. Muy bueno el profesor.
Blackman quiere continuar la educación bilingüe que la escuela ha defendido por los pasados 20 años. Su objetivo está conectado la escuela y la comunidad. Ella está trabajando con el sistema de biblioteca del condado Monroe para agregar una sección de libro bilingüe presentado a los autores puertorriqueños para las bibliotecas públicas. El plan está en sus etapas tempranas, pero Blackman espera que esté listo en unos meses.
No es una traducción directa, pero sí tenemos esa literatura linda y preciosa de poemas, de historia, por nuestros propios autores. Es bien importante para nosotros poder tener eso visible a la comunidad.
La segunda parte es la de alentar estudiantes a traer latas de comida y ingredientes que representan culturas hispanas para ayudar a FoodLink y la Liga de Ibero a alimentar a los ancianos.
En la parte política, en la parte de economía, en la parte de social justice, de justicia social, ¿cómo se puede hacer? Queremos extender el salón a la comunidad para que nuestros estudiantes puedan tener esta práctica y se puedan convertir en miembros de esta comunidad.
La cosa más importante para Blackman es mostrar que Eugenio María de Hostos es un símbolo de esperanza para la comunidad.
Cuando llegué a este país no sabía hablar inglés y fue en una comunidad y en una escuela donde aprendí los dos idiomas. Y entonces me siento moralmente y espiritualmente responsable para poder ofrecer a nuestro niño y nuestra comunidad lo que ya yo he recibido.